All right, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another week of SaberSim's DFS office hours. It is Monday, May 15th of 2023 here. First stream after the weekend. We do this show Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern, so always love our Monday shows. A lot of questions come in over the weekend, so that keeps us pretty busy here. Looking ahead, we got a 10-game MLB main slate today. We have no NBA games until tomorrow. We are officially kind of entering NBA Showdown season here with the conference finals taking place here. So usually like one game per day. So it should be a lot of NBA Showdown action. And then we have a one game NHL Showdown. But we also have another golf major this week with the PGA Championship. So it should be a lot of fun talking about that ahead of Thursday's tee off here. But for those of you who are new here, welcome. My name is Andrew, one of the coaches over here at SaberSims, a show where we go over how to use the SaberSim app, answer any and all DFS related questions. You can post questions live in the YouTube chat or in the office hours channel in our Discord server. If you're not in our Discord, there's a link in the description below to get joined up. I highly recommend it. As always, a lot of good DFS conversation happening over there each and every day. But let's get the SaberSim app pulled up here. I have one question that came in from support, and then we will jump over to the Discord, and then we will jump over to any live YouTube chat questions that come in. So first question to get us started today is, hello, how many low-owned stacks should I have in my lineups, 20 entries and 150 max? So not a wrong or right answer to this question. Also just depends on slate context here and really how many games are on the slate, who's on the slate. All of this is going to change, right? SaberSim is going to be able to take all of this information, manage it all, and then give you what it perceives to be are the best lineups for this particular slate context here. So that's the great part about using an optimizer like SaberSim, able to analyze all of this data and give you something useful on the other side after you run your builds, right? So it is really in the post build where I would be looking to do any of my own work to kind of help the builder get me to the lineups that I want to get it to, right? Or do some risk management here. Like, for instance, right off the bat, we're getting 75% of this number 7 hitter from Arizona. Probably just grades out really well here, but probably don't want that much of any individual hitter, especially a low salary hitter, be it as it may here, kind of towards the bottom of the lineup. So it looks like we like Arizona in general here. Our top 4 exposures of our first 20 lineups that we're seeing here are all Arizona. 3 batters and 1 pitcher here. But right off the bat, what I would do is probably just increase my mini uniques to maybe about half of the number in my lineups here, brings some of that exposure down here from 75% to 50% and lower. And then we can make any adjustments from here, right? And then we can kind of figure out what we want to do from here. But I think increasing the mini uniques just to start, just to create a new kind of baseline here is probably where I would start. And then I would go over to some of these other tabs here. So we talk about like a right to left approach here, starting with mini uniques, jumping to stack types, making sure you're seeing the stacks that you kind of want, and then you kind of get into the team stacks, right? Which is what the question was about to start with, but I kind of wanted to give some of these precursor items here as well. As far as, figuring out what stacks you kind of perceive to be low owned, a couple different ways you can do that here, right? One way is on the home screen. You can go to team stacks. You can sort by projected runs, and then just kind of note, who are like the highest team implied run team totals here. So like, I would probably be making a note of any team that's like over 5 implied runs here, and then you could just keep that handy, and then you could also kind of note some of these teams that are coming up more frequently that are not at that threshold, right? And then something that I personally like to do is I like to try and find an estimated stack ownership. So I'll look at like these teams that we're talking about over 5 implied runs. And then what I would do is I would just filter for that team using the filter icon. I will go to all batters And then I will sort by order here, so I can see 1 through 9 or 9 through 1 here. But I can just look at the bottom part of this question here, and I'll get rid of the question so you can see this as well. And then I'll just kind of look at the ownerships here and try to come up with a number that is directionally accurate here, right? So we're seeing 19% India, 29% Fraley, 22% Steer, 18% Stevenson, 8% Senzel, 11% Ramos, 16% Will Myers here, even with their number 9 here coming in at 20% here, right? So I think it's fine to say like, okay, I could expect this team to be like 20-ish% owned as a stack here, right? Just kind of eyeballing this. And I think that'll get you closer to just to give you a number. So like when you go into your post build and you see that you have 20% Cincinnati stacks, you kind of understand like, okay, maybe I'm not as leveraged on Cincinnati as it might appear to be here. I'm actually just, I don't know why my screen is glitching. I'm actually just closer to the field, even though Cincinnati is my second highest owned stack here. I actually have probably much more leverage to Arizona here, which you might be able to figure out intuitively, but just having that marker can be useful, I think. So just to kind of come full circle here, not a perfect answer as to how many low owned stacks you should have. I think that SaberSim does a good job of diversifying here. So it's really kind of getting to these two teams that it really likes in Arizona. Cincinnati likes it a little more than the field, not as much as Arizona. And then, you kind of get this big spread down here, right? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 teams where we have one stack of them in our 20 lineups here, with some 2s and 3s kind of mixing it up here. But the mini uniques is going to help you get to a more spread out array of teams here. So I would take advantage of that, and also like be checking some of these stack exposures, how far down I'm going in my pool, how many what exposures I have to individual batters. Do I not want to have exposure to any individual batter over a certain threshold, right? I think 50% would probably be the max for me here. And I'm even open to lowering this for any individual batter here, just because when you click on their name and you see their range of outcomes, their highest scores are usually what's the word I'm looking for? The points that they score in the sim most often is going to be, 0 or less than 5 here. And then you have this big tail event to the right here, right? So owning these players at a high rate it comes with a lot of variance, right? That's what we try to capture with this adjusted ownership. What adjusted ownership is doing is looking at this player's range of outcomes and then artificially inflating or deflating that ownership because we are negatively weighting ownership in our Saber score metrics here. And what it is doing is telling the builder, hey, this player might not get to this mean projection as often as it might seem. So be careful putting this player in too many lineups here. And I think the best example right off the bat here is Jake Fraley, 29% ownership in your contests, but our adjusted ownership is saying, hey, he's a lot more variant than what you might think. This projection of 12, that his mean projection is he's getting to that number about 8% of the time here, right? And then all of these events where are actually more likely that are under 12 points in the sims. So I think adjusted ownership does a very good job of capturing that variance here, but not a wrong or right answer to this question. Handle it kind of on a slate by slate basis here, but let SaberSim kind of guide you along the way. All right, jumping over to the Discord here. Question from J Sams Jr. And it looks like J Sams Jr. is here. How are you doing, John? All right, question says, can you walk through how to make a rule when you create a lineup, and also how to know if that rule you implemented will show up in the sims when you run them? Okay, so I think the easiest way to answer this question is probably with like a stacking rule. So what I would do is, if I wanted to set a rule where it said, stack at least 3 player, or let's say 5, right? Stack at least 5 players from the same team. It doesn't matter which team, all teams are checked here. And then just going to save this rule. As long as this rule is checked on your lineup rules here, it is active. It is not checked, then it is not active. So then what I would do is I would run a build here. And then when I would get to the post build, I would go into my team stacks or even my stack types rather, and then I should have a 5 stack for every single lineup that is generated, and then that is how I would know that the rule is working here. So gonna let these lineups finish up. Just note that when you do use rules, might slow down the builder a little bit here. Lineups still finished pretty quickly here, but once I'm in this screen, go over to my stack types, and you can see that I have 3 stacks that were built, and they're all 5 stacks, 5 threes, 5 twos, and 5 1 1 1 stacks here, right? So what you see in the post build is basically a summary of whatever was generated. So we don't see any 4 stacks or 3 stacks. That's because none were made in this pool. So sometimes something that'll come up, especially on like maybe like a little bit of a smaller slate, is people come to the post build like, hey, I don't see these teams or this team in any team stacks. It's like, that's because they weren't generated in any of the lineups that were built when we randomly sampled the sims. So there were actually no lineups with that team. Happens rarely, but I have seen it happen. And it's not that, we weren't accounting for that team. It's just no lineups were generated with that specific team. So just something to note there. But that is how you do it. And J. Sam Jr. says, smash that like button, please. I would appreciate it. All right. Next question here from Bill's Nut. I think this is a good question. All right. Question says, I'm confused after watching 2 recent videos. In Jordan's recent MLB process video, he curated stack types he wanted for the slate size pre-build. Yet in the MLB roundtable video you just did, it sounded as if curating stack types was discouraged pre-build. I tend to favor it. What is your recommendation? If you recommend curating stack types pre-build, which stack types do you recommend for different slate sizes? Also, when building 5,000 lineups, what is the lowest rank from that pool that you would include in your final lineups? Okay, so 2 questions here. One of these questions refers to a recent pro video that we just released on Friday. It was a little bit different of a video here. It was a video with Jordan, Scott, and I, and basically Jordan would present a aspect of a DFS lineup here, and we would have to grade it on a scale of 1 to 5. So some of the discussion points were like aggregating projections, aggregating ownership, creating stacking rules, creating player groups, researching weather, and different things along those lines related to an MLB process here. Video got a lot of positive response, so glad people liked that content. It was a little different for us here, a little bit different format, but definitely open to trying new things. If you guys didn't see that, that's a great reason to be on the pro plan. These pro exclusive videos where we are challenging DFS theory, challenging each other, talking about the ins and outs of different concepts here. So I've watched both videos, so I'm familiar with both of them. Basically, in the MLB process video that Jordan did, he came in here and he came to stack types, and then he just checked in the ones that he wanted to see. So he's basically saying, hey, I want at least a 4 stack here. So then he will just filter for those here. That way the other type of stacks don't even show up in his build here. And we did this on the stream, and basically what happened was you would lose about let's say that you didn't check these check or uncheck anything, right? About 1 to 2% of the lineups in the pool that we ran on that show included a 3 stack or less. So then if you just zero those out, you would lose about 1 to 2% of available lineups in your pool. Not super detrimental to your number of lineups if you're trying to get super diverse or anything. But you can get those lineups back by having some type of input on stack types, unchecking stacks, or having some type of stack rule that limits what stacks can come up. I would say that the biggest reason I'm kind of against that is because I see users maybe go like a little too far with this specific thing. So what Jordan did is he said, hey, I don't want any 3 stacks or less. So he's kind of putting a rule that is basically saying, give me any 4 stack or above. I think that's fine. He's just kind of trying to push the builder in the direction that he specifically wants to go. I think where users run into trouble here is that they'll be super specific and say like, okay, I only want a 4-4 or a 5-2 because 5-2s I have been winning, and I always want that one off that has good ability to hit a home run. I think it's like when you go kind of too far with this rule, where you can really start to limit the builder, and then you have a lot of trouble getting to builds. And then from this screen, right, from this stack types, then players go to team stacks, and they're like, okay, I only want 4 stacks or 5 stacks, but then I only want, these teams as 5 stacks, and then I only want these teams as 4 stacks, right? And then it just kind of opens Pandora's box a little bit to me, and I think that players can just get a little too crazy with some of the things that they're requesting pre-build, and I would rather see users handle that in the post-build after the builder has generated these sims. So for me, the way I kind of see it is like one step down like a rabbit hole that can be detrimental to users who aren't doing it very intentionally or very specifically here. And I would just prefer to kind of stay away from that path here. I think that the exact same thing happened for me specifically, where I said that I like to make adjustments to min and max exposures in the post build, and I graded that highly. And then I gave an example of what I do it, and then Scott told me like, okay, the way you do it is the exception to the rule, not the like ground base level explanation for doing it. And I think that doing adjustments to stack types in the home screen, the way Jordan did it, is almost that exact same thing, where that is the exception to the rule rather than why you should do it to start with. So I prefer to advise people to do it in the post build, but there are definitely cases where you can do it successfully in the pre-build. I just think that it is a can be a little worse if you're not doing it correctly there. And then second question here was, when building 5,000 lineups, what is the lowest rank from the pool that you would include in your final lineups? And this is a good question. So for me, what I like to do is, I think there's always a balance between min uniques and your sorting metric here, right? You should want to weigh your sorting metric, right? What your sorting metric is trying to do is bring the top approximate highest EV lineups up in your pool and give you those to play, right? So if you are going super far down in your pool all the time, kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel here with your lineups, you are essentially avoiding or not playing those lineups that SaberSim said are better from all the lineups that were generated when it grades them, right? So I think that there's a balance there between striking a balance between what you want, your min uniques, your team stacks, etc., and figuring out what is the best balance of all of those things when figuring out what lineups you want to play here, right? So the easiest example for me is like, let's say that, I'm increasing my min uniques as high as I can here, and it looks like 8 is the highest I can go. And then let's say you're using 8 min uniques, but then let's say, you're also putting in some min and max exposures here. And then all of a sudden, the bottom lineups in your pool are out of 500. It's 500, 499, 494, 488. Like you start to scrape the bottom of the barrel here. When I see that, I know that that's a direct effect of what I have done with the min and max exposures, with min uniques, with stack types, with whatever here, right? It's not that the builder wants to give me those lineups, it's that those are the only lineups that are now meeting the criteria that I have put on the builder. So from there, what I would prefer to do is walk some of those restrictions back a little bit and see if I can get to some higher ranked lineups in my pool. So going from 8 min uniques, where I was seeing lineup like 465, to going to min uniques of 7, now brings me back to lineup 221, as opposed to my lowest lineup in the pool being 465. So just one min unique adjustment here brings me back to the top 50% of lineups in my pool. So I would be much happier with this. Still not seeing any team stack over 25% here. So I feel very comfortable with like a min unique of 7 here. as opposed to a min unique of 8. But if you ask Jordan, he would probably say a min unique of 8 is perfectly fine for him, right? So I think part of that comes from like some of the curation that he does in the pre-build, knowing that the type of stacks that he doesn't want to see aren't going to be generated. So I think that, when you're doing something like that, when you're curating in the pre-build to make sure that you're comfortable with every lineup that gets shown, I think that might be a reason to be okay going deeper into the pool. But me personally, not making any of those adjustments, I like to try and play lineups toward the top of my pool more often than not. All right. This is a good question here from Cloak Mistborn. It looks like there was a little back and forth with Matt and Shady Advice here. So just want to answer this for everybody listening. Said, how do custom projections influence sim diversity 10 and the sim optimals here? So good question here. So basically what happens with custom projections specifically is that if we go and look at any individual player here, let's pull up our highest projected pitcher, Merrill Kelly here, right? So Merrill Kelly's mean projection is 17.8. Let's say that you upload custom projections or even just adjust his projection in the my projection column here. And let's say you move it up 3 points. So basically what's going to happen is we have his distribution here. We are going to shift the entire distribution based on the absolute value that you input here. So if you move him up 3 points, every time he scores 20, now he scores 23. Every time he scores 40, now he scores 43. So you're increasing the floor and increasing the ceiling of this player as well as their mean projection here. So we are basically putting your custom projections on top of our distributions for the player. That way you get to take advantage of the player distributions that we generate in the sims, but you also get to use your new mean projection when also getting access to that range of outcomes here. So what happens with sim optimals is that we are still going to randomly sample a single game sim for like MLB Showdown, for example. But then at the end of that outcome, we are going to apply your custom projections. And then if that combination of players shows up, we're basically going to do that every time we sim the game. So let's say we're building 500 lineups. At the end of every game sim, we're going to apply the adjustments based on your custom projections. And then we're going to generate the highest scoring lineup or the optimal lineup for that game sim after those custom projections are applied. And then from there, what Sim Optimals is doing is it is just counting how many times the same combination of players shows up at the end of the lineup being created. So we apply your custom projections and then we build the lineup. And then we just count how many times the same combination of players showed up. And then that is now your new Sim Optimals. But as far as, anything else, there's nothing else really happening there. We are still, the sim database exists, and then we are just pulling from that the entire time. So that is all that is happening there. But I thought that point was definitely worth clarifying. And good question, Cloaked Mistborn. All right. Next question in the Discord here. Question says, my question today is, can you please help me understand how to develop a repeatable process? I am struggling with understanding what stacks to go overweight on and underweight on playing the nickel contest on FanDuel. Okay, so yeah, happy to talk about this. I think that the best thing that you can do to create a repeatable process is to write the process down and to do every step of your process every single day. So I think that's something that I used to do is, I would kind of have a process. And then what happens is, you continue to learn, you continue to try new things, you find new things that you like, and some things that you used to do kind of get lost along the way. Even if those things were good, even if those things were helping you add value to your lineups, you might just forget, it just gets so repeatable. You're thinking about all these new concepts, right? The best thing that you can do is just write your process down on a piece of paper or on a Word doc and just go through it line by line. This is an exercise that Andy actually had me do. He had Jordan and I do it where we just wrote down our process, and then we had to basically justify why we were doing each step of our process. And it actually helped me to figure out, what pieces were important, what pieces were just noise. Why was I doing them? Was there a strong case for doing it versus for not doing it? And then I was able to figure out, okay, I could probably get rid of these couple pieces, not adding a ton of value. These pieces really need to stay. And then as new things come along, I could figure out where it fits into that process. And I can basically hold myself accountable. Like, I am doing these steps every single day. These are why I'm doing them. And then as time goes on, I can figure out what aspects are not working, which aspects are working. I can add to this document here, right? So just a couple bullet points, nothing too crazy here, but I think just having something to hold you accountable, holding yourself accountable in some way, and then that will help you to figure out if you can create a winning process and if you can continue to do it, right? So I think that, if you don't have a way to replicate this process, is it really a process, right? Or are you just kind of doing something different every day, getting lucky every once in a while here? So I think having some form of accountability is really important, and you can make adjustments from there. All right, last question in the Discord. Then we're going to jump over to the YouTube chat. Looks like we have a healthy amount of questions in the YouTube chat, so it should keep us busy for quite a bit longer here. Question from Kyle G. So I'm starting to dip my feet into some MLB Showdown slates. I would like to add to my current process. I currently build sims, make sure there aren't any relief pitchers in the captain spot, make sure the relief pitchers in the utility spot haven't pitched in the last day, and then finally filter by GL mean. What else do you recommend or think could be added to this process? Okay, really good question here. First off, I just, for anybody watching, just want to point everybody to this video over on our YouTube channel. So if you go to playlists, you go to how to beat MLB DFS in 2023, which is one of the first videos that pops up here. Jordan did this video recently. It says, learn the secret to beating MLB Showdown contests in 2023. I think this is a great start for anybody who is new to MLB Showdown, who wants to start learning about MLB Showdown here. And then what you can also do is go over to the homepage, and then in the search bar, just type MLB Showdown. We have older videos, which I still think are good videos here. And then we also have some segments from office hours where you can jump into these videos and then listen to the sound bites in the description of where we talked about MLB Showdown here. So we also have some older videos, longer videos here. I think that, all of these videos, just because they're older does not mean that there's not good information and data in these. I think that they can actually get kind of lost along the way, even if, I don't think DFS is changing enough season to season where some of the concepts talked about in these videos are no longer relevant. I think they are still relevant, but I think because it's a new MLB season, people will discount some of the information in them. And I think that's probably a bad thing rather than a good thing here. So just some general notes on MLB Showdown before we get into this here. But I would say relief pitchers are probably a good spot to start, probably something that a lot of people aren't looking at. I think the main reason is because when you pull up like the DraftKings app on your phone, I haven't done this in a while, but it used to be like this, where it would only show players who are projected to be in the lineup. So you see the two starting pitchers, you would see batters 1 through 9 from each team, right? But you would have to toggle that button off to go and see the relief pitchers. So I think for anybody kind of hand building MLB Showdown lineups, it's pretty hard to get to relief pitchers, and then it'd be pretty hard to figure out who to roster, right? So I think a great place to start from there is MLB. What is the website here? Baseballpress.com has a bullpen usage page. You can find it at baseballpress.com/bullpen-usage, where it'll show you the bullpen players for each team, and it'll show you how many pitches they threw in each of the last 5 days here. So I think that's a great place to start here. Aside from relief pitchers, aside from GL mean here, I think that one thing that you could probably do is let's just like pull up a slate here. So we had this Washington Mets game kicking off pretty early here today. I would say that, listen to the builder as far as what type of stacks you want to go with. But I think that, you could probably do something interesting with mixing up the order of the batters that you're getting here, right? So I think one one good thing that works across all showdown slates is build a cash lineup where the sliders are on 0-0. And then this will just give you an idea of what a traditional optimizer optimizing based on mean projection is going to spit out. And then this will give you some intuition about who are the most popular captains, what are the most popular stack types and constructions, and what team is being favored here. So when we build this cash lineup, we can see that David Peterson is like far and away the most popular captain here, right? So then, boom, that's one piece of information that you can now leverage in the post build. It's like, okay, noted David Peterson is probably going to be the most owned captain far and away, maybe even higher than the 30% that we're estimating at the moment here. And then what are the most popular stack types? We're seeing a lot of 5-1s and 4-2s. And I bet you they're going to be in favor of the Mets here, right? So we're seeing a lot of 5-1 Mets, a lot of 4-2 Mets, and not really a lot of balanced builds here, right? So noted there. So heavy on the Mets and Mets stack with a Mets pitcher captain. So I think that's great information to have, right? So then now when I go to the post build, I'm going to run my actual build. And I'm going to make sure my slider's on 0-10. Boom, all good here. And then I'm going to generate this. And then I'm going to make a note here. New York Met pitcher captain. New York Met 5-1 and 4-2 stacks. So heavy on the Mets here. All right. So now I'm in the post build here. We are actually pretty far away from David Peterson captains here, even though he is our most owned captain, or like pool exposed captain. We're saying that we want to kind of get away from him, right? I would still, even in showdown, kind of work right to left here. And I'm not going to do too much on mini uniques here, but I am going to go and look at my stack types, going to go and look at my team stacks. I like to come in here. Let's say if I want to get different from the field here, what I like to do is come in here and basically match my stack pool exposures. So Washington is showing up at about 10% of sims at 5-1. We know this is a construction that the field is really not going to play, or doesn't want to play if you're using a traditional optimizer. So I'm not going to get crazy here, but I'm going to come in and I'm going to match Washington stack pool exposure for these stack types that I wasn't seeing here, right? And then if I'm somewhere in between, I might just kind of lean opposite here. I like this. I like how many 3-3s we're getting. We're matching our pool exposure on Washington 4 stacks, Washington 5 stacks, which we know the field doesn't want to play here. And then once I get into my captains here, David Peterson is like kind of interesting here. He was like far and away the best captain. I think it's okay to fade him here, with him showing up in about 15% of the pool, in about 30%, or even we might even think he comes up more often, and then take some shots on some of these hitters. Maybe all it takes is, one home run from one of these guys to kind of get there ahead of David Peterson here. So okay with the negative leverage on David Peterson at captain here, but for me, I don't think I'm doing too much aside from that. I'm really trusting the game sims and these outputs that we're getting to. That's why I'm kind of trying. I'm leveraging the game sims, saying, hey, Saber Sim is giving me some Washington 5 stacks, Washington 4-2s, opposite of what cash lineups are looking like. I want to leverage those. I want to make sure I get to some of those. So from here, aside from your relief pitcher work, your GL mean for duplication work, I think this is a sound MLB Showdown process, and I would be happy to play the lineups that come from here. So just trying to add a little bit of value, not trying to be too hands-on, really just trying to leverage the game sims here. If there's any follow-up on that question, just let me know, Kyle. But I'm going to jump over to Daniel's question here. It said, hey, I'm having some issues with baseball recently. I'm diversifying my lineup portfolio, and I'm using the lineup rules for home run percentage and trying to follow the process, but no luck. Any other tips here? Okay, so let's go back to MLB Classic slates here. Go back to this main slate. And so far, basically what I'm getting is that you have this rule active where, you want to use this like rule where it's basically like, hey, if a home player has a low home run expectation, use them in a stack. I think that's a fine rule. That doesn't mean that's going to happen in every single lineup that's generated, right? What you can also do is if you want to see how many players are part of this rule, you could save it as a actually no, it'll save it for each individual team. So you can see where that threshold is, and then if you are on the pro plan, you can come in here to all batters, and then you can sort by home runs. And then you can see, how many batters are kind of below that threshold here, right? And what I'm going to do is just add a filter for batters. Basically, any projected batters like over 4 implied fantasy points. So just don't want to see those coming up. So really, our rule is applying to everybody from William Contreras down here. And I would say that's maybe less than half of players here. So I'm just looking at where like my scroll wheel is here. So that's probably in like the 30 to 40% like bottom percentile here. If you wanted to see, how many players were actually a part of this rule, what you could do is you could download the projections and then filter for home runs and then do like a count of how many players are below that number, but not going to get that in depth here. Just wanted to see how many players that might be applying to here. But from here, like I said, a lot of your work is really going to come in the post build here. So glad to see that you are doing that. If you want to add something to your MLB process here, aside from applying that one rule, aside from applying mini uniques, and not doing too much else, I think that you could probably get some good use out of running a research build here. This was like another topic that we kind of all went back and forth on our roundtable discussion. But I think if you're looking to add something here, running a research build or a test build of sorts, I think is a good option here. So I like to do something where I'm running like a 0-9 build for pitchers, where I don't want batter correlations to really affect some of the pitcher exposures that I'm getting on the other side. And then I like to run this like secondary build where I put correlation at about like half of whatever value that it's at, where correlation isn't having a super big impact on the stacks that are coming up, but it's still having some impact, still accounting for some of the correlation here. And then I want to see kind of what teams are still popping even at these modified correlation values, looking at pool exposures mostly here, and trying to do some additional research to figure out what teams might be sneakily good here, or that I might want to get some additional exposure to. Also helps me to figure out if I want to be on the chalk or not. We had a discussion last week about, all chalk isn't bad chalk. All chalk isn't good chalk. Chalk can be good, chalk can be bad. You never want to just blanket fade chalk or be under the field on chalk, because sometimes it's warranted. Sometimes those are the best plays on the slate, and it is okay to match the field or even play more than the field in some cases here, right? So I think running a research build of sorts can give you some ideas about the slate in general from that point of view. All right, question from Austin said, is playing 300 unique lineups in 150 max is optimal, or should I be playing the best 150 in both? So really not a wrong or right answer here. I think, just be careful using like the word optimal here. So basically what you're doing is you are basically sacrificing, some of the EV from the top of the lineups for being more spread out, getting to a wider number of lineups here. The good thing about this is that, if you are somebody who is trying to build a strong pool of lineups, playing more lineups from your pool is only going to help you get more of those actual scores from the pool into your contest that you play. So sometimes people come on the show like, hey, I'm playing like 3 or 4 20 maxes. I have some really good lineups in my pool. They're not getting into my contest. First thing I say is, play more lineups, right? So if you're noticing that you're having a strong pool of lineups, often playing more lineups from the pool is only going to help you realize some of that equity faster, right? So that's one of the good things that you do. You get a little more spread out. The only thing that doesn't really happen in this instance is like when you have a really good lineup in your top set, that lineup does not take down multiple contests here. So I think that I'm a proponent of probably, or I'll just tell you guys what I do. So I like to look at the payouts for different contests that I'm playing, and then figure out, how many of these contests do I care about winning first. And then I will note how many unique entries are across those contests and play that number of unique lineups. So for instance, let's say that I'm playing the $4.20 max, the 25-cent 20 max, and then I'm playing 2 dime times. Let's say that, I don't really care to win the dime times. It's like $10 to first. We'll say I'm playing the smaller dime times, but the 25-cent is like 500 to first. The $4.20 max is a couple thousand to first, right? So I want to win either the $4.20 max or the 25-cent 20 max. I really don't care to win the dime times, but I want the additional action under the $3 range, right? So what I would do in that instance is I would build 40 unique lineups where 20 are going into the 25-cent 20 max, 20 are going into the $4.20 max, and then the 40 lineups are just being duplicated into the 2 10-cent 20 max dime time contests. So that's the lens that I like to approach it from. I would question or suggest that you look at your contest selection portfolio and then maybe figure out how many lineups you want to build based on something similar to that. But I think that's a good framework overall. All right. Really quick, Kyle said, thank you. Explained perfectly. Yeah, man, happy to give you a good answer here on the show. J. Sams Jr. said, is it a good idea to target batters lower in the batting order? Do those players have the same high upside as the batters in the top of the order? So really good question here. I think that, I'm a big proponent of playing all batters from a team from the chalkiest teams. SaberSim is going to give you a good mix of stacks because we are randomly sampling the sims. So there may be sims where, some of the bottom order guys do good and you get this mix of sims. You're not always going to get these like 1 through 5 batter stacks using SaberSim. I think that happens very naturally here. What we can do is we can go into this build that we ran, and then we could look at some of these top stacks, right? So I'm looking at Arizona here. We have a 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 Arizona stack. Then we have a Seattle stack of 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then we have a red stack of 1, 2, 3, 5, 9 with Matt McClain there. So correlation is going to play a part of this, and then the sims that we pull are also going to play a part in this here, right? So if you click on any individual batter here, you can see their correlations to the other batters in the lineup, and usually it's going to be the batters, kind of one away from them. So if Fraley's number 2, you're going to see correlation to the number 1 batter, the number 3 batter, the number 9 batter, the number 4 batter here, right? And that's just something that I've generally seen here. I don't know what order these players are in, but that's what it looks like here to me. So correlation is going to be important, but if we have a team here, right, where at maybe I'm using no min uniques, maybe I'm just letting the builder get to as much of this team as I want. Let's say that the builder was naturally giving me like 75% Seattle here. Something that I like to do is come into the players tab, sort by team here, and then I'm going to go to Seattle, and then I'm going to make sure that my Seattle exposure is spread out. So what I want to do is go, or actually I can just search in the team bar. So in the search bar, just search Seattle. So SEA here. And what I'm going to see is, okay, how much exposure do I have to all these players here, right? So Ty France, 50% batting second, Colton Wong, 10% batting ninth. I also kind of want to look at how much pool exposure I have here. We have the 4 batter at 40%, number 6 batter at 40%, Raleigh at 55, Kellenick at 70. We have 0 Taylor Trammell, and then we have 70% to the 1 hitter, 30% to the 7 hitter here. So to me, if I have 75% Seattle stacks, I think having 70% of a batter when that batter is only used in 21% of the pool lineups is probably too much for me, right? I think that, I want to force the builder to come up with some different combinations here. So I might drop this down to like 50% saying, hey, I have 75% lineups with Seattle. Do not use a player in more than 2/3 of those lineups. Go and find other combinations of this team here. And then I might increase my exposure to all batters and say, hey, at least use 10% of each batter in the lineup, and just try and get more spread out here, right? So Colton Wong goes up to 15. I know that I'm not playing 50% or more than any batter. So now I'm a little more spread out, and then I'm still getting to all of that Seattle stacks here, right? But just doing it a little bit differently here. So this is one way to try and spread yourself out here, as opposed to just playing the same type of construction where I'm always playing JP Crawford and Raleigh and Kellenic. Now I'm getting a little more spread out and playing a better array of Seattle players, because I'm mostly looking at this. I'm mostly looking at all the players as an individual team as opposed to individual batters here. Okay. Next question here. J. Sams Jr. had a follow-up, said, also, how can you know if you set a rule for players to hit at least one home run, how will you know if you got those players once the sims run? Okay, so I think the question here is, hey, I'm using this rule for one-offs. How do I know if it's working, right? And what I would say is go and find a player from you're basically just going to have to kind of test this out, but go and find a player under that home run expectation, which we said was like the bottom third here, and then just write them down. So maybe it's like Bobby Witt Jr. and Colton Wong. Okay, so we'll look at this lineup for each of these guys here. So I have this Bobby Witt Jr. lineup and Colton Wong, and then I'm going to run a build, and then in the post build, I don't know if we ran it with this one build here. I think we were just running it with the stack rule. But if I were to want to check this, what I would do is then I would come into these lineups, and then I would search for that player's name. And then I'm going to say Witt here, right? So then in the lineups in my pool that have Witt, which is only 3, so maybe we could use Wong here, because I think Wong was coming up more on those Seattle stacks. So I have Colton Wong here in a little more pool lineup, so better mix here. What I would do is use the magnifying glasses. This is going to extract all the lineups that this player is in. And then you can come over here, and then you can see how many lineups have this player and what the stack types are. So watch. So if I turn Colton Wong off, it's going to show me all of the stack types for all the lineups. And you can see these pool numbers. So I have 249 5-3s, 175 5-2s. When I filter for Colton Wong, these numbers are going to update. When I use this magnifying glass, instead of that 249, 175, those numbers go down and saying, hey, I only have 15% of 5-3 Colton Wongs, or 15 lineups with 5-3 Colton Wongs. I have one lineup where Colton Wong is in a 5-1-1-1 stack, and then I have 11 lineups where Colton Wong is in a 5-2 stack here, right? And then I could even filter further. It's like, okay, hey, show me the 5-1. And he's actually used as a one-off in this individual lineup here. So this is how I would spot check it. This is how I would figure out if it was working. So I'm pretty sure we ran these lineups with that rule off here, but I would run it with it on, and then, take like a random test of a random player and then see if that lineup, if that rule is working the way that you intended for it to work. Daniel said, and also, do you have to have a lineup rule for the home run expectancy and have 3 players with that player if it's below 10%? So this is just a rule to kind of manage your one-offs here. Basically, there is like a general DFS heuristic that if you're playing a one-off, you want that player to have the ability to not need other players from his team to do good for that player to do good. So for instance, let's say that you're playing one of these guys who has a lower home run expectation. How is that player going to score fantasy points? That player is going to get on base. That player is going to have other players on his team drive that player in, or that player is going to hit RBIs. And what happens in that type of scoring environment is that other players on the team do good as well. So you almost don't want to play that player if he's not stacked, right? But if you take these big power hitters, right? Pete Alonso might hit 1-2 home runs where the rest of his team really didn't do that much. Pete Alonso can get there on his own because he's a big bat with a higher home run expectation in the Sims here, right? So that's kind of what people are doing. It's a way of curating your kind of one-off pool here and making sure that if these players that thrive in these team game environments are used, they are used in a stack and not as one-offs. So that is kind of what the rule is trying to do here. It is not, a rule you have to use. I think it is a safe rule. We talk about, people come on the show like, hey, what is a rule that I can implement for X sport here? And like in NBA, it's, a general good rule is, for midseason NBAs, don't use more than 3 players from a team. There are exceptions to that rule. I think that for this rule, it's like, hey, what is a good baseline rule for MLB? I think this is a good baseline MLB rule here that I would suggest for somebody wanting to start to experiment with rules here. Shane said, any merit to setting team stack exposures closer to team stack pool exposures? Example, Philly team stacks are in 70% of build lineups, but only 35% of pool stack exposure of 5,000 here. So I think this is a good question. I would say that, I think it's a good sanity check, these pool exposure columns here. And the reason I say that is because, SaberSim, what SaberSim is going to do is it is going to push to the top of the pool the lineups that it perceives to be highest approximate expected value here, right? That is what SaberScore is trying to do. So SaberSim in and of itself does not understand risk management here. So I think that a good sanity check, a good risk management step that you can take is, okay, SaberSim is saying that this team is a really good play by themselves, but overall in the entire pool, this team is used much, much less. And there are other teams with a higher pool exposure that I am playing at a lower frequency here. And that could be due to ownership. That could be due to upside, et cetera here. But I think it's a good note for you to make and figure out if you are comfortable with that number. So for me, I like to be a little bit closer to that number, but the way I get there is a little differently. I get there by increasing min uniques, and then I also get there by adjusting kind of like what percent exposure I want to any one hitter here. So like when I'm building 150 lineups, I might come in here and do like a blanket global exposure of 50, 40%, depending on the day here, and say, hey, that, by doing that, I'm trying to force SaberSim to come up with these alternate ways of stacking a team where it can keep the stack exposure, whatever it wants, but it is not going to play one individual batter in all of those stacks and saying, hey, you can play 50% of Seattle. That's fine. But make sure that you don't use any more than, 7 out of 10 lineups have the same player. And I might even drop that number for 20 lineups here and say, get more spread out. There have to be better stacks that have close EV that don't use so much of that one player, where all of my lineups are kind of centered around that one piece. And with baseball being so variant, I'm not super comfortable with that much individual player batter exposure here. But I definitely value this stack pool exposure column here, and will use it to make decisions on my own personal lineup portfolio. All right, getting to the end of the questions here. If anybody has any last questions, now's a great time to get them in. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Looks like viewer count is up. Nice long stream for a Monday. So we're going to be hitting these questions here from Noah and then see what happens from there. So Noah said, hey, any way to see the Sims model for PGA? Very interesting. If it shows balanced builds versus very top heavy. The second question, do the Sims do tiers for MLB? I was checking out tiers and realized how hard each tier is. So first question is that, or I'm going to answer this second question first, is that we do not support tiers at the moment. Definitely something that has been requested in the past here. It is on our roadmap to support in the future. We have some bigger projects in the works that we're really excited about that are taking precedent over those, but I can note it as a feature request here. Support for tiers, and just let the team know that people are asking about it here. So happy to take that one back to the team. And then to get back to your first question, anybody see the Sims model for PGA? So if you're interested in some of the outputs that come from the Sims here, if you're on the Pro plan or one of our grandfather plans, you can see some of this data here. And we don't have Sims up for this week yet, but I'm going to go back to last week's tournament, which was the AT&T tournament on May 18th. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so it looks like we have actually these are initial sims for this upcoming week here. Looks like they ran over here on the right. What you can see is you can see the players' percentiles, and you can also see the individual stats. The average number of eagles, the average number of birdies, pars, bogeys, double bogeys, bogey-free rounds, make cut percent, win percent. So all of this data that you see here is summary statistics from the sim. So let's say that we sim out the golf event, I don't know, 5,000 times. And then what we do is then we go and look as like, okay, how many times did this player make the cut? And for John Rahm, it's like John Rahm made 91% of the cuts in all of our tournament sims here. And then that gets added to the app. How many of the tournament simulations did John Rahm win? How many eagles did he shoot on average here? So we add up all the eagles that he made and then divide it by the number of times that we ran the tournament. And then we get to say, hey, John Rahm made approximately 0.62 eagles per sim here. And then that all gets summarized here. So if you're looking for like sim output information, this is the best snapshot that you are going to get for that. All right, everybody. We hit all the questions from support, Discord, and the YouTube chat. A nice long show today. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in here. And before we get out of here, just want to let you guys know that if you guys are not playing over on Owner's Box, make sure to take advantage of the DFS contests on this site. The contests continue to overlay. The contests are generally softer. A lot of the best players are not playing over on Owner's Box yet, so that is a good opportunity for you to get in there and take advantage of those rake-free and even overlaid contests. If you use promo code SABER or SaberSim, you can get a $500 deposit bonus, and we will track your entry fees, and you can earn free SaberSim credit for the standard plan, for the pro plan, and for the prop plan. Each time you cash in your credit at these different tiers, we reset your credit to 0, and then you can earn free months. You can earn as many free months as you can. There is no limit on the amount of free months that you can earn. But until tomorrow, everybody, good luck in your contest. Take care. If you guys are building lineups throughout the day, question pops in your head, drop it in the Office Hours channel. Let it sit there until tomorrow. Gets us a steady queue of questions to get started with. But until then, good luck in your contest. Take care. I will see you all. Thanks. Bye.